All right. You wanna get started?
Hello.
Way to go. That's great. That's excellent.
Welcome to State of the Start.
You are listening to Paul Moore and Daryl Ross. We work at Start Garden, working on an entrepreneurial ecosystem that's identifying and removing barriers to people who want to innovate and launch new things, and with the ultimate goal of building new wealth and new value in our city. And we take a systems level point of view on this stuff. And this week, we are taking a systems level point of view in Austin at South by Southwest.
Yeah, so we've had the privilege of taking in all things South by Southwest since last week. We'll be here a couple more days, so we might deviate a little bit from our normal script on ecosystem development and the importance of ecosystem development in obtaining equitable outcomes through wealth building. But in that same spirit, you still get us. So I think,
and there's so much like this is the crazy thing about South by Southwest. Like, there's so much, just so much content, and it's coming from all these different areas, so many different sectors. I didn't even see any of the big brand name people this year. Like, basically every single Democratic presidential
right
candidate that you're going to find out about in the next year has been holding court.
Yeah, I shied away from the politics and did a lot of the emerging tech, a lot of the AI, VR, autonomous vehicles.
Yeah,
and
I did
quite interesting.
A lot of the impact investing, because this is a place where people come here and they talk about sort of being on the very edge of something. It's like the edge of a field. So here it was the edge of impact investing, the edge of being. I got to hear a really just fun panel of Black and Latino women, Black and Latinx women in tech, and just sharing their story and the impact that Catherine Finney's Digital Undivided is having for minority women in tech. It was pretty incredible to hear. There was what else did I do? Oh, we both went to that one guy.
It's the one guy.
He just came out with that book. I'm blanking on his name, but the name of his new book is Team Human. And
yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, he's kind of a veteran of the digital age. Like, was it South by Southwest back when it was a handful of techies talking about this new thing that they thought had huge potential called the internet? And
now, was it me, or did you have like 5 or 6 paradigm shifts through his presentation?
Yeah.
I think the way that he framed technology is not being about the end user anymore, or how things morph and not become about the end user. And of course, he said it way more eloquently than we'll ever be able to define it. But for instance, so we'll use the economic development where stocks and raising stocks were originally to capitalize businesses. And the whole concept was for businesses to raise money. And now it's the tail wagging the dog, where it's now businesses exist to maximize the price of the stock. So he took that kind of framework and applied it across tech and some of these emerging technologies. And I was telling Paul before we started and we went live, I'm really struggling with my own cognitive dissonance around this emerging tech and AI and the opportunities. I think what we may gain maybe on the economic development front maybe have some social consequences that I didn't realize prior to South by. It's been a great challenging mental experiment for me.
I'm just looking over my notes from that Team Human talk, and some of the things that came out of that are that every technology is a drug.
Yeah, now how are you using that drug, right? So let's expand on that. Then he went on and say, drugs are good when they're fixing things, right? So your car breaks down, you're having a weather emergency, though you use Skype or FaceTime or whatever your medium is to still hold meetings and be productive. Yeah. As a drug, then it's fixing something that's broke. But when it's just to get happy and use it.
But when it's a dependence,
right?
He says that's when you start to lose what it is to be human. You start to fall out of some of the, the random creativity that passes through people's lives, and also the actual human connection. That was a big part of that. Was something he said is that we are not able to connect using our devices. Now that doesn't mean connect like we connect on the phone. He means like a human connection. You can't understand somebody's nonverbal language. You can't smell them. You can't feel the, emotions that are coming off of them. But what happens is when we use these devices as an intermediary, our brain doesn't blame the device that we're not getting all the information. Right. It blames the person on the other end for being an asshole or something,
right. Well, going down that rabbit hole of lack of human interaction, I went to the Sony house. Did you have a chance to go there?
No.
So they've had 5 individual robots that I guess were raised individually in their AI. They put them together in a group. These things are talking to each other, developing their own language, and basically now have formed a temporary AI learning community. Themselves. I mean,
what?
Equipped with with their own language. Their language is actually evolving. Words that they used in the beginning are now becoming obsolete. It's almost following the trajectory. This is scary of mankind. So it's very interesting and spooky. But yeah, exciting technology coming.
So this is like it's probably good to start off because this is very much like the kind of like South by Southwest. You zoom out and look at the globe and what's happening, and these are the kinds of conversations you start having, and then you drop down.
And let's put context to our for our listeners, because you don't know a lot about us. You're probably talking to the 2 biggest proponents of technology and applied technology and high tech, high growth businesses and so forth. So we're not I don't know that we would be your typical.
We're not trying to regress back to some sort of simpler life, and we don't. I think what was something that keeps us awake at night is that a service job doesn't seem to be able to support a mom raising a kid anymore, and that's a lot of the economic development work that we see going on. It's either you go into this box and you're an entrepreneur, you go into this box and you're operating a machine, or you're serving, chicken to tables. And like, but I think we see that there's a lot more fusion. And actually there's been a ton of, I think something that has maybe popped up in every single panel I've gone to, every single speaker I've heard, is everyone is unanimously in agreement that capitalism as it works today doesn't work
for everyone.
And they're also unanimously in agreement that they don't want to throw out the system that exists and replace it with a new system. But it's actually kind of refreshing. It's kind of refreshing to hear everybody saying, okay, whether it's talking about impact investing, or it's talking about creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem, or it's talking about the role that tech companies need to play now, today. Everybody's realizing that everything is way more integrated than anyone feels comfortable with,
Yeah, and I think that's where it was kind of reinforcing on our approach to ecosystem development, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than just economic development. But so by focusing on the foil and the interconnectivity of all of those resources and opportunities and how they work for everybody. So what kept bringing home to me is how important it is to really create within a spatial area, whether that's a city, a state, opportunities for everyone to participate in entrepreneurialism, especially as it relates to wealth creation. Because what happens if you create these pockets of wealth, or you create these sectors of wealth, and this success is not spread by everybody, or the community doesn't see the upside, the unintended consequences have become highlighted in some of these outbreaks, right? So again, you focus on stock price, you make a small group of investors rich. This group of investors then to look out for their own personal interests, pursue things which are basically the results of, I guess, segregated wealth, right? Yeah. Where a lot of, to your point, a lot of ecosystem building is, I think, making capitalism better. So it's not about rewriting it or doing it. It's about expanding those opportunities for everyone.
Weird. You literally just, like, I have this written down. It has quotes around it from a talk. Somebody was making that exact same point. They said, we need to stop talking about haves and have-nots, and we need to just talk about expanding opportunity.
Right.
Do people have access to opportunity wherever they are? Because if they have access to opportunity, they have the freedom to use it. Right.
And that's what ecosystem is about,
basically, yeah.
right? It's creating and defining that end state where everybody has equal opportunity to participate in our case, entrepreneurism, and then being very, very specific and intentional on removing every obstacle and barrier to provide that opportunity. So again, it's not about the individual plants anymore. It's about the soil, and that's what we tend to do, and that's what we want to focus on with our ecosystem work.
And that's actually, it's funny because if you scratch just beneath the surface, that's a very strong theme that's coming through the conference right now. Is
but
that
I have to reword that because I don't know that I like the soil of opportunity. I don't think that really plays well, right? It's in the dirt.
It gets the job done.
Right. So.
No, but I think that's something I think that's a shift. That's a shift from just talking about who has money and who doesn't have money and who's getting wealthier and who's not getting wealthier. Definitely this year it's people wading into the weeds and the complexity of how do we create more opportunities within these systems that have become a bit calcified, and a lot of the opportunities limited to a group that has blocked off a lot of other people from getting the opportunity, because that might actually create too much competition.
And it's that simple. It's about creating more opportunities. It's about creating more wealth. It's not a shift in wealth or a shift in assets. And I think a lot of times these conversations become dead on arrival because it comes across as this redistribution or this anti-capitalism. I think we truly believe that good ecosystem work takes into account the opportunities within capitalism and are just intentional on making sure they exist equitably across space.
Yeah. This is so what's something that you heard while you've been here that's really sticking with you? Because I'm skimming through my notes and it's
I don't have my notes, so you're putting me on the spot. I think I kind of the previous thoughts that I have communicated are pretty much my learnings and insight. The other thing that I think South by allows you to do, and I know this is important to entrepreneurs and we don't do it a lot, and ecosystem workers, and that's to exhale. Just to exhale and create these temporary learning labs and these temporary learning networks where you can glean information and pass it. So I've just been kind of walking around taking it all in again. There's understanding this is
there's also this South by thing that happens where you start to all these dots start to connect across all the things that you've been hearing. Like you'll even wind up like walking into a bar and listening to a band, and something on the wall starts to connect to the thing that you heard at a thing. And for me, a big one has been that talk about technology and how it's actually it's not, our brains don't understand that we're not connecting with another human being through the medium of technology. It thinks that it's connecting with a human being, and it thinks that it understands what's going on. But why is it if you're a Trump supporter or a non-Trump supporter, you can't sit in the same room at this point.
But you think something, right?
But you think you understand each other.
The other thing it did to me is it reinforced. I mean, at Star Garden, we believe that one of the, I guess, three core approaches on our ecosystem work is this shared leadership model that takes into account diversity and diversity of thought. I think, if I do say so myself, I think we did a great job at challenging our preconceived norms and really going to breakouts that made us look at things differently. And again, that's just more of that muscle memory exercise and more of the exercise of making sure we're challenging ourselves with different perspectives from different people coming in from everywhere. Because again, it takes that amount of humility and intentionality to really make sure we're working across the entire ecosystem. So again, it's been good challenging myself. You know what I even did?
What?
I ate sushi for the first time. I'm a black guy, for the record. Talking about challenging.
We were together. Where did you eat it?
At Ra. So,
that place is so good. I've been there twice.
It was great. But again,
I was there today.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. But again, I mean, to really be effective, I think you have to kind of get out of your comfort area, right? So met some great new friends, great new networks over some raw fish. So yeah. And to that degree, I think that there's a lot about work that's been popping up. Like there's this guy that was talking about how his company, they've
they've eliminated a lot of the bias in the interview process. His whole thing was like a job interview. A job interview is an hour-long performance from someone who's mostly lying to you. And he said, and we take signals from how gregarious the person is and attributes that we like about them, and then we give them a job, and it has absolutely no indicators as to how they're going to perform. So his company actually has hired a lot of people that are on the autism spectrum because it's a programming company. Mm-hmm. And they've created just completely different tests to identify people's capacity for pattern recognition, their resilience as far as problem solving, their teachability, like some core things that they found that were really important before they ever even like have a conversation.
Right.
And then
it's been my experience hiring as a 50-50 thing.
Oh, it's complete luck.
Yeah,
it's never ever going to be what you think it is going in. Mm-hmm. 6 months later, you're always dealing with a totally different person than you thought. But what he did actually say is that every single day, all of the employees will take a quick survey as to how do they feel about their team. Do they feel appreciated by the company? Do they feel comfortable voicing themselves in front of, their manager? And they call it the net loneliness score. And it's like a key performance indicator for their company. Is like, do our employees feel lonely? Especially because a lot of them have autism. A lot of them, feel a lot of challenge in like a social environment.
And tells you the power of network too, right? So even within entrepreneurs, I mean, something worse and probably more ineffective than a lonely entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So again, if there are ways to gauge those within the ecosystem and make sure we're intentionally building those networks and checking on it,
I
think that could be. I know there's a lot of emerging talk on how do you measure healthy ecosystems? What are those markers? We would definitely, as Star Garden side, say the network piece of it, and the network that you are either intentionally creating around up and coming entrepreneurs or that they bring themselves is a key element to sustainable businesses and ecosystems.
Well, and that seems to be the thing that's becoming more and more like just a recognition toward the human,
right?
That like sort of the human scale, right? Mm-hmm. What is the kind of business you're...
Just sounds so like human.
It does, but I think in contrast to say like 5 years ago, everything was about trying to create a tech unicorn.
Correct.
This year it's very different. It's about how are you creating value in the world.
So going back to that human piece, I think one of the more interesting breakouts that Star Garden actually participated in is, what measuring quality ecosystems and entrepreneurship, what are then the effects on wellness, right? So we're part of this Wealth for Health initiative that basically says, there's a direct correlation between an increase in income and your wellness, right? So again, when we talk about ecosystems, when we talk about entrepreneurial activity and wealth building, it's not just in isolation. So just wealth doesn't come in isolation. It actually goes back to that wellness, and it goes back to the wellness of the community and back to that human piece. And it kind of puts a why we do the work, which has kind of helped be our North Star a little bit.
This is so funny. I can't believe we didn't have this conversation earlier, because this is and everything this popped up in a couple of different places when people were talking about impact investing. There's a lot of investors that want to see a return on an investment that is also a social return, right? Or an environmental return. So like we kind of understand like carbon footprint kind of
right.
Goals, but what they were saying was it's a very pragmatic thing when you add a metric that is an impact metric. And the way to go about doing it is not in this sort of like top-down government, like you have to have this percentage of minorities on your staff, you have to have this, level carbon footprint, you have to have XYZ. They said that it takes a lot of just digging in and understanding the business model and what the founders want to achieve, and then kind of working your way back to one or two measurements besides revenue that are key to making the business even stronger. And it sounds so funny because I think it's like one of those things that people have it just doesn't sound like pure capitalism. You know, it's
Right,
it's
right.
like stated, we're not going to measure.
And maybe that's the problem.
We're not going to measure anything, but is it making money or is it not? Does it have oxygen or
Right.
does it not have oxygen? Just like, well, it might have oxygen, but is it also like nutritious food, you know, going into the body? And I think that it's not a regulation.
I would challenge that norm, right? In this definition that it's not real capitalism has just become this working definition of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So let's just change it right here on State of the Start, where we're going to use capitalism is how do you use capital to affect isms?
All right, this is a very Joe Ross kind of thing.
You like that, right? So whether that's
what kind of isms?
Yeah, racism, sexism. I mean, again, entrepreneurship and has a ability to really offset a lot of racial history.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship has a opportunity to offset a lot of the wealth disparities even amongst different sexes, right? So again, I think doing it in a holistic way, the capital piece doesn't have to be this negative thing,
right?
And I think the way we see it, it really is how do we attract as many people to as much capital through entrepreneurship to kind of erase all of these historical isms. So I say it tongue in cheek, it's straight on, I think, to our approach.
But it's a great example. There's quite a few examples that came out. One of them that I liked was it was like a coding boot camp business. You know, they go in, they train people in 12 weeks how to go from being sort of a novice, you know, somebody who's got an aptitude for coding to like somebody who can do an entry level job. As they were working up their funding, I mean, they were getting funding, you know, from people who wanted to invest, but then really trying to dial into what's a great metric for that business that's going to focus the entrepreneur in the exact area that in this case is that he needs to grow, and results in a healthy impact that an investor wants to see, who has a double bottom line. Well, one that they came up with was 18,000 hours, I think, over 3 years of time on the job. That might be time doing the work. It might be time in an internship. It might be, but it's on the job time doing the coding, because their 10-year goal is to see, you know, wealth transformation. But you can't get to a 10-year goal, you know, in year one. But in the first 3 years, you can set a goal of, you know, so many thousand hours of actually on the job time. And by setting that goal, you're making all of you're focusing the business on the right thing. Right. You know, and because you could just say we're going to take tuition and then be out. But because they were like, well, we want, you know, we'll take the revenue, but we'll also focus on making sure that everybody's on the right path. The right number to track was how many hours are you on the job, because the more hours you're on the job, the better you're going to get. And
that's to get to a very specific stated goal.
And then the funding became more layered, because then you had maybe somebody who's more philanthropic who wanted to see just that impact happening in the community. You have somebody who is more looking at it as a business, who might be looking at it as like, great, that sounds like a great goal. You're gonna have to have a huge funnel of people coming through.
And let's be honest, that sounds like the opposite of what we run into a lot of times in dealing with different cities working on economic development or ecosystem building, right? That lack of that specific goal and that lack of that end state really hinders them then at having those first year metrics, or whether those steps out the gate. So it's easy to say, hey, we want equity for everybody. We want all entrepreneurs to be successful. But that's totally different than saying, look, we want to create the business ownership to model the demographics in our city. Okay, now in the African American population, that's what we need to do in the ecosystem for the Latino population or for females. So again, we can have these universal goals and these targeted approaches, but it is, I think we both are always slightly humored and probably more irritated when we work with quote unquote system level players that have these very ambitious dreams that they cannot at all define.
So
or they start with the measurement without the end outcome, right? Like somehow training 10 people to write a business plan in a year is going to get to something. But again, I think it's that end state and being very definitive on that goal is the first thing that a lot of ecosystems need to do.
But it's the end state, and then saying we're going to stair step our way into the end state, and at each step there's probably going to be a different goal.
Right.
You know, because 3 years after having however many people, you know, with 18,000 hours of on the job work in coding, that company's goal is probably going to be much more, let's say, in like the job placement or in the median salary or something, you know, that has whatever that sort of impact metric is. But you can't get to, and I think that's where people go wrong. They either start off with like the year 10 goal, and then they don't understand why 6 months into it you're not like making progress.
Well, and the challenges of that
goal.
Pace of change too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's real political and real and real and perceived issues on that pace of change.
Yeah. Or they start with something like easy, which was what you were referencing, which is just like, well, what's an activity that might actually, you know, get toward people starting businesses? Well, we'll do, you know,
or even worse, what's an activity that I can count easily and then put on this
80 people
statement.
will attend a lean business model Canvas class.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious real quick though. What do you think about the scooters?
That almost warrants its own show. I think I guess it's not a show, its own podcast. I think scooters, mobility, that last mile, and then the opportunities, I guess. I think to put it in perspective, when we landed here in Austin, there's 60,000 scooters on the streets.
60. So in paint a picture, these are, first of all, they're everywhere. They're all battery powered. So it's an electronic scooter. The user interface is incredible.
Oh yeah,
like,
I must say I've added it to I am anti-gentrification, but I love the scooters. So for disclosure, the scooters are awesome. But I think it highlights another thing. So we got the backstory. The scooters landed months ago in Austin. No policy, no type of anything. It was quote unquote their free market, right? You drop the scooters and they'll move around and so forth, which has happened in a lot of municipalities. I just read an article yesterday that the CDC is now looking at scooter use as one of the number one health issues, right? So now all of a sudden,
because the ER is filled up with people.
Let's quantify that. Even in Austin, the number one injury now are scooter accidents. So again, it's that lack of ecosystem or lack of system level views. And when you do something over here, then how is that going to affect healthcare costs and quality of life and wellness and so forth? And again, it's not that it's a wrong or right. I think it's more of understanding and asking and being intentional and looking for the unintentional consequences of a lot of action.
And it's not about getting rid of the scooters. And I will tell you, after this is like the year of the scooter at South by the way, because as Daryl said, there's 60,000 of them. They are literally like, you cannot walk 2 blocks without encountering a group of scooters sitting on a street corner. And I've stopped walking. I mean, and I think a lot of people.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Have ceased walking. Yeah. And not only that, but I've also stopped getting into a car, like an Uber or a Lyft, although I'm using Uber and Lyft scooters, right? Because now Uber and Lyft have scooters. There's about, I think, 6 different brands of scooters that are all over the place. But I'm using the scooters almost exclusively.
Well, and let's talk about
I can get 2 or 3 miles on
it. And I read this thing too. I mean, that's why I said this almost deserves its own podcast. I read this article on death of the app, and I'm like, yeah, right. These things are the native technology in these scooters. You don't open an app. You don't do anything. Your phone gets near it. It brings up the QR code. So the application of technology ease to solve a public need it's miraculous. But again, that doesn't mean it doesn't come with unintended consequences. And that's again just taking the system level view, because quite frankly, cities and municipalities may just decide that an increase in ER usage is worth it.
Well,
I just think it should be a conversation.
I think Pandora's box has been opened, because I cannot imagine going back. When you're
gonna miss your scooters when you hit the ground.
Because especially this conference, you wind up the way that the conference is situated. 10 years ago, it was almost exclusively inside of a convention center. I'm talking about the interactive conference, not the music festival. Now it's spread out into, I don't know, 10 hotels. You might have to walk
very decentralized
a mile and a half, and you've only got 10-15 minutes between sessions to get from one place to the next. The scooters have made it so that you can pretty much get anywhere within a few minutes. You literally unlock the scooter in a few seconds using your phone. and you just stop. You just leave it wherever it is that you leave it. You know, don't leave it in the street, but you leave it and you take a little picture of it so that they can tell that you haven't vandalized it or anything. It is so easy. I cannot imagine that they can somehow reverse this and try to like regulate it out of existence. I think that it is such an easy convenience. I don't think it can go anywhere.
And Lord forbid, I mean, it comes down to, you need shoulder pads and a helmet and so forth.
I can see how people starting to get tickets if they're not wearing a helmet.
And it's hard to regulate. I think one of the interesting things that are going to come out of it is, at least, I'm speaking locally.
Let me ask you this: how many people have you seen wearing a helmet riding a scooter?
Absolutely zero.
I saw one because they had just given the helmet away as part of a promotion from Lyft. Or no, it was Uber that was promoting this new thing called Jump. So they'd given the helmet away, and that person was wearing it. But literally, I've seen probably 10,000 people riding a scooter. Not a single one's wearing a helmet.
And I would say one of the things, and we're speaking locally coming out of Grand Rapids, the minority community has been pretty livid on this whole bike lane expansion, especially through neighborhoods that don't participate in biking and through neighborhoods that didn't participate in that conversation. It's going to be very interesting as scooters dominate these bike lanes, because there's this mentality that bike lives matter, right? So it's going to be real interesting because, while I may not use the bike lane and I scorn everybody as I'm late to work because now I have one lane that used to be two, I could very well see the urban community for that last mile taking advantage of scooters and really helping, whether that's helping with transit to public transportation, to home from that transportation. So it's, this is
very different.
Who would have ever thought scooters as disruptive technology?
It's mind blowing because it really is. I mean, I've been doing 2.5 miles each way to get to where we're staying every single night. It is no problem. I would do it at 12:30 at night. It is so easy. And when I think about all the years that I've taken a bus for a lot of years, the amount of times that I could have gotten on a scooter, been to work before the bus ever showed up at the stop.
True.
Yeah.
I was introduced to him in Detroit, and I fell in love with him in Austin. So it's all over. Hopefully it's my definitely my preferred last mile transportation.
You're gonna buy one?
I think the unintended consequences. Yeah, I would. I think the unintended consequences again need to be looked at. I think it's going to have some very interesting conversations, even on some of our personal autonomous vehicle work. Yeah. But if adopted at scale like it has in Austin, that's.
And at scale again is like you cannot, like, if you close your eyes, you're going to trip over one wherever you are.
This is at scale, meaning if you want a scooter, you can grab one. Yeah, this is
wherever you are,
wherever you want.
It's awesome. Yeah, 2019, the year of the scooter at South by Southwest. Something that I did not think was going to be.
I did not see that one coming.
Did not think that was going to be a big story.
And now I heard. I was speaking to one of the ex-councilwomen. They have. 3-wheel scooters coming for older and people who aren't as physically able to stand up. So.
Yeah, that's something. Not many people have been using the bike. There is Uber also has a bike that they've put everywhere, and I don't know if it's because it's new, because it seems like they just brought them for South by Southwest.
I think bikes are going to be an electric
bike.
I think bikes are going to be like the MySpace of last mile. You know what I mean? I think so many people invested in bikes and they wanted this bike thing, and
you see those bike shares. Those bikes, and they're full of the bike share kiosks are full of bikes. I haven't seen a single person on a single bike.
Not at all. So again, it'll be very interesting. I would say that the combination of tech, ease, and availability have made scooters way more adoptable than biking even. And again, biking came with this kind of elitist type of status anyway in certain neighborhoods. But Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to having a mobility conversation again. And a lot of this stuff, it doesn't seem like economic development, but it is that intersectionality. For instance, I own a business in a commercial corridor, which I would love for people to start being able to just get up and down the street faster.
Yeah.
Conversely, I do miss, walking and talking during South by and some of the conversations you have. So again, it's not that there is not without its trade-offs, but very interesting. Thing going on here.
And just like the Michigan House. So we always come down with the Michigan House, which Michigan House has been great this year. A lot of
The other thing I want to say though, and this sounds so crazy, the way that they have blended technology, ease of access, availability with scooters, it probably is the most accessible and equitable transportation solution that I've seen in years.
Yeah.
And that's crazy, right? Because damn things have been around since.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a phone, you can use it.
Right.
No, but I think that what we're seeing also is with like at the Michigan House, we saw a lot of attendance, and I think what it did is it stretched the ring around the conference of all the places you could go, and I think one of the reasons that we saw a lot more attendance this year is because it was just a lot easier to get around, 5, 6, 10 blocks than it's ever been.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. No, I think there definitely is a significant economic impact just beyond the supply chain. That's another thing. The supply chain for scooters is people get paid like as if you were an Uber driver. You get paid to drive around at night, pick up scooters, charge them, do maintenance on them. They have a whole like decentralized fleet of service providers that are doing all of the charging and the maintenance on these things. But it's fascinating. That is our 2019 South by Southwest State of the Start.
It is.
And
I'm Daryl. This is Paul. We might actually check in again. Who knows? We have a lot of different conversations bubbling up, but I definitely would like to go back to that mobility and as it relates to autonomous vehicles.
And I will post a picture of some of these scooters in case you're in a place that doesn't have gigantic hordes of scooters parked on the corners, so you can get a sense of how many are here.
And we're also aware that this ecosystem as a field and as a conversation is emerging work. So common definitions, common language. We're still sorting through all of this. So at any time, please feel free to email us. Go ahead and shoot us some comments in the comment area. If there's topics you'd like us to discuss, if there's something that we can learn from you, we're sponges. So again, we look at this as being interactive, and this ecosystem building is a full contact sport, and we want to be part of that conversation. So however we can add value to the work you're doing, and however you can bring us value, we welcome that and we thank you.
Yeah. So email hello@startgarden.com. This is Paul Moore. It's Daryl Ross. You can let us know in the email. You can add us on Twitter or Facebook. I think we're just Start Garden on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
And at Paul Moore and at Daryl Ross on Twitter.
Yes, the Paul Moore.
Is it the Paul Moore?
It's the Paul Moore. Yeah, it's at the Paul Moore on Twitter.
Well, I gotta get a the.
Yeah, there's no. It's probably taken already. Someone else is the Daryl Ross.
I spell
probably
my
your dad.
Huh.
All right.
Thank you for listening. State of the Start.
See ya.
Deuces.